What kind of son laughs in his father's face and says, "You don't need a lawyer, sure he has the old man trapped?" When I walked into that simple meeting with two attorneys at my side and asked him, as calmly as I could, to say those words again, I watched his smile fade in seconds. In that moment, he finally understood that this time I wasn't the one about to be cornered. He was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it really began, in my living room on a Tuesday afternoon, when I still believe my son had my best interests at heart. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I was 63 years old, sitting in my small bungalow watching an old documentary about the rail yards where I'd spent 30 years as a foreman. These days, I did small warehouse consulting jobs, helping companies avoid costly mistakes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. The knock on the door interrupted a segment about signal systems. Through the window, I saw Trevor's car in the driveway, that sleek silver sedan he'd bought after his last big deal. My chest warmed. It wasn't often my son stopped by without calling first. "Hey, Dad." Trevor walked in with that confident smile of his, wearing a sharp suit, hair styled just right. He carried a leather folder under one arm. "Got a minute?" "Always got time for you." I gestured to the couch. He sat down and opened the folder on the coffee table, spreading out a small stack of papers. "Just need you to sign a few bank things. New property deal coming through and they need some standard paperwork from family members." I leaned forward, trying to read the headers on the forms. The print was small, and my reading glasses were in the kitchen. "What kind of paperwork?" Trevor waved a hand dismissively. "Just verification stuff. You know how banks are. They want everyone's signature on everything." "But what am I signing?" He sighed, that particular sigh that said I was being difficult. "Dad, it's financial documentation. You don't really understand modern finance anyway. That's okay. Most people your age don't. Just trust me on this." Something tightened in my chest. This was my son, the boy I'd worked double shifts for, the kid I'd helped through college when his mother got sick. "I'd still like to know what I'm putting my name on." "Look, if you want to read through 20 pages of banking jargon, be my guest." Trevor tapped his watch. "But we need to get to the branch before they close. The deal's time sensitive, and if we delay, we both look bad to the investors." The way he said it made me feel small, like I was holding him back just by asking questions. "All right, let me get my coat." 20 minutes later, we were standing in the local bank branch, in the public lobby where anyone could hear us. Trevor spoke loudly to the teller, a young woman named Jenna. "This is my father, Leonard Harlow," Trevor announced, his voice carrying across the marble floor. "He gets a little confused by paperwork sometimes, so I'm here to help walk him through the basics." Heat crept up my neck. An elderly couple near the ATM turned to look. I wanted to say something, to tell them I wasn't confused, that I'd managed complex safety systems for 3 decades, but the words stuck in my throat. Jonah Price, the branch manager, came over. "Leonard, good to see you. What can we help with today?" Before I could answer, Trevor jumped in. "Just need Dad to sign some account verification forms." The form Jonah placed in front of me had dense paragraphs of text. I picked up the pen, trying to scan the words, but they blurred together. "I think maybe I should—" "You definitely don't need a lawyer for this," Trevor interrupted, chuckling as if the very idea was absurd. "It's just standard stuff. Right, Jonah?" Jonah hesitated. "Well, it's verification that Leonard is aware of." "See? Verification. Nothing complicated." Trevor tapped the signature line. "Come on, Dad, don't overthink it." I signed my name, feeling like I'd just done something I couldn't take back. Trevor tried to slide 2 more documents in front of me, but Jonah gently intercepted them. "Actually, these would require additional verification. Why don't we schedule something for next week?" As we walked out into the parking lot, Trevor pulled out his phone and turned slightly away. I heard him say, "Yeah, got the first one done. I'll get the rest soon. Trust me, the old man folds easy when you press him in public." I stopped walking. That phrase, "the old man folds easy when you press him in public," played over and over in my head as I climbed into his car. My son thought I was easy to manipulate. My son thought public embarrassment was a tool. He dropped me off with a promise to call soon about that next appointment. I walked inside and stood in my kitchen as the late afternoon light slanted through the windows. For 30 years, I'd kept rail yards safe. I'd learned to spot the small signs that something was wrong, the subtle shifts that meant trouble was coming. And right now, every instinct I had was screaming that I'd just made a terrible mistake. I couldn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m, I got up, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table staring at nothing. When had my son stopped seeing me as someone to respect and started seeing me as someone to manage? I thought back to the rail yard, to the man I used to be. I'd been respected. People listened when I spoke because I knew what I was talking about. When I said a procedure wasn't safe, crews adjusted it. I remembered Trevor at 19, just starting college. I'd worked 16 hours straight covering an overnight shift, then driven 2 hours to see him because he'd called saying he needed to talk. "Thanks for coming, Dad," he'd said. "I know you're tired. It's what fathers do. You work hard, you take care of your family." He'd nodded, serious and young. "I'm going to pay you back for all this. Once I get my business going, I'm going to take care of you the way you took care of me." I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Talk to the bank. They can fit us in Thursday afternoon for the rest of the paperwork. I'll pick you up at 2. The rest of the paperwork. Papers I hadn't seen, terms I hadn't read. I needed to understand what was happening, so I did what I always did when I needed to think clearly. I went to work. The warehouse job was simple. The operations manager, Corinne, walked me through their current setup and explained the issues they'd been having. I spent an hour examining everything, then showed her 3 specific changes that would solve their problems. "That's it?" Corinne looked disappointed. "We had another consultant in here last month who wanted to redesign the whole system. Would have cost us $40,000. Sometimes the expensive solution isn't the right one." She smiled. "This is why we keep calling you back, Leonard. You actually listen." The compliment settled warmly in my chest. Here, people respected my opinion. They valued my experience. As I was leaving, Corinne mentioned she'd once had a contract dispute with a difficult client. Then a friend recommended this lawyer, Nora Finch. Best money I ever spent. "Nora Finch," I repeated. "Yeah. She does estate stuff too, property rights, that kind of thing." Corinne wrote a phone number on her business card. "Here, in case you ever need it." That evening, I had dinner at Trevor's house with him and his wife, Paige. Their house was bigger than they needed, all open-plan living and expensive furniture. Another couple sat on the white leather couch, holding wine glasses. "Dad, this is Dale and Simone. They're investors in my new development project." The conversation flowed around me, talk of market opportunities, property values, projected returns. "The beauty of it," Trevor was saying, "is that we're getting in before the area develops. Once the new highway extension is confirmed, property values will triple." "And you've secured the funding?" Dale asked. "Almost there. Just finalizing some collateral arrangements this week. Family backing, very solid." My stomach dropped. Family backing. Collateral arrangements. "That must be nice," Simone said, "having family support like that." Paige turned to me with a bright smile. "Leonard has always been so supportive of Trevor's ambitions. Haven't you?" "I want him to succeed," I said carefully. "Of course you do." Paige's smile tightened. "Although sometimes I think older generations don't quite understand how modern business works." Trevor laughed. "No offense, Dad, But the rail yard was pretty straightforward. What we're doing now requires vision, risk tolerance, understanding complex financial instruments. Big moves require big thinking, Dale added. Can't make real money with old yard worker mentality. I excused myself early. I drove to the neighborhood diner, needing somewhere quiet to sit and think. That's when I heard Trevor's voice. He was at a table across the room, talking to someone I didn't recognize. Just needs to get the deed situation cleaned up, Trevor was saying. The house is paid off, so it's perfect collateral, but the old man's being stubborn about the paperwork. He's refusing to sign? Not refusing exactly, just asking too many questions, but he's too soft to say no if you push hard enough. I just need to get him in the right setting, and he'll fold. What if he doesn't? He will. He's 63 years old and thinks like it's still 1985. Guy doesn't even understand basic investment principles. I'll handle it. Something inside me turned to ice. This wasn't miscommunication. This was calculation. Trevor saw my house, the home I'd worked 30 years to pay off, as an asset he could access, and he saw me as an obstacle too stupid to defend myself. I pulled out the small notepad I always carried. With a shaking hand, I wrote, bank visit, papers, deed situation, and the date. When I looked up, Jonah, the bank manager, was walking into the diner. He saw me and nodded thoughtfully. I left cash on the table and walked out into the cool evening air. My son thought I was easy to manipulate. He thought age and loyalty made me weak. He was wrong. At home, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. Old bank statements, property tax letters, the original house purchase documents, insurance papers, pension statements. My house was fully paid off. I'd made the final payment 7 years ago. The property was in my name only. I had savings, not a fortune, but enough to live comfortably. My pension was small but steady. On paper, I wasn't wealthy, but I wasn't vulnerable either. Everything I owned was mine, clear and unencumbered. So what exactly was Trevor trying to get me to sign? I pulled out Corinne's business card and stared at the phone number. Nora Finch. I saved the number in my phone and stared at it for a long time before finally putting the phone down. I'd call in the morning. The next day, I had another consulting job. The loading dock manager was frustrated because his crew kept having close calls with forklift traffic. I watched the operations for an hour, then pointed out that their main problem wasn't the forklifts. It was the signage and floor markings. We need clearer zones. Pedestrian paths here, forklift routes here, no mixing. The manager nodded. We brought in some big firm last year. They wanted to charge us 6 figures. Sometimes you don't need new equipment. You just need to use what you have more intelligently. That's why I like working with you, Leonard. You're practical. Another reminder that outside my son's orbit, people actually valued what I brought to the table. During lunch, I sat in my truck and pulled out my phone. I stared at Nora Finch's number for a full minute before pressing call. Finch Law, this is Maurice speaking. Hello, I'm Leonard Harlow. I was given this number by Corinne Vega. She said Nora Finch might be able to help me with some questions about property and family legal matters. Just a moment, Mr. Harlow. A warm but businesslike voice came on. This is Nora Finch. What can I help you with? My son has been pressuring me to sign papers related to his business. He says it's standard, but I overheard him talking about using my house as collateral, and I don't fully understand what's happening. There was a pause. Have you signed anything yet? One form at the bank. Jonah Price was there. He's the branch manager. And your son wants you to sign more? Yes. He's arranged another meeting on Thursday. Mr. Harlow, I'd like to meet with you before that meeting. Can you come to my office tomorrow? I can do that. She gave me an address and a time. Bring any documents you have, and Mr. Harlow, don't sign anything else until we talk. I won't. For the first time since Trevor walked into my living room with that folder, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone in this. That evening, I walked to a small park near my house. Kids were running around while their parents watched from nearby. I used to bring Trevor here when he was small. When had it changed? When had the kid who said, "Thanks for coming, Dad," turned into the man who said, "The old man folds easy"? I'd wanted so badly for Trevor to do better than I had that I'd let him treat my kindness as weakness. The sun was setting as I walked home. I wasn't going to fight Trevor with anger or confrontation, but I had something better. I had facts, documents, legal rights, and now I had someone who could help me understand them. At my kitchen table, I pulled out my notepad and wrote, "Call Nora Finch, ask about house, loans, rights." I underlined it twice. Then I composed a careful email to Trevor. "Got your message about Thursday. Before we go to the bank again, I'd like to understand exactly what I'm signing and why. Can you send me copies of the documents ahead of time?" His reply came within minutes. "Dad, there's nothing to worry about. These are standard business documents. If you start overthinking everything, we'll miss the window on this opportunity. Trust me on this." Not a single answer to my actual question. I closed my laptop and looked around my small kitchen. The old counters I'd installed myself. The window overlooking the backyard where Catherine used to garden. This house was mine. The life I'd built was mine. And I was done letting anyone make me feel like I had no right to protect it. Nora Finch's office was in a modest professional building downtown. Her conference room was small and practical, a table, 6 chairs, a credenza with a coffee maker humming quietly in the corner. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with dark hair pulled back and sharp eyes that took everything in without judgment. She shook my hand firmly and gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into her chair across from me. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." So I did. I told her about Trevor showing up with the folder, the first bank visit, the pressure to sign quickly, what I'd overheard at the diner. I showed her the documents I'd brought, my house deed, property tax records, bank statements, and the text exchange from last night where Trevor had brushed off my questions. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Her pen moved steadily across the paper, and I noticed she wrote down specific phrases I used, specific dates and times. When I finished, she sat back and looked at me directly. "Mr. Harlow, I need to be straight with you. If your son is trying to use your paid-off house as collateral for a business loan without your full understanding and consent, that's not just unethical. It could be a legal problem. More importantly for you, if that loan defaults, you could lose your home." The words hit like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. Can he actually do that? Not easily, but there are ways to structure things that might give him access if you've signed the wrong paperwork. That form you signed at the bank, do you remember what it said? Any specific language? Just that I was acknowledging something. Jonah seemed to think it was minor, nothing that gave Trevor any real access. "We'll need to find out exactly what it was," Nora said, making another note. "But the good news is that you own the property outright. It's in your name only, and you haven't signed any mortgage documents or loan agreements. That gives us solid ground to work from." "What do I do about Thursday? He's expecting me to show up and sign whatever he puts in front of me." She tapped her pen against the pad thoughtfully. "First, we're going to get clearer on your rights and protections. I want you to understand exactly what you own and what Trevor can and can't do. Then I want to bring in a colleague who specializes in contracts and litigation. His name is Elias Grant. Between the two of us, we can make sure nothing gets past you." "I don't have a lot of money for lawyers," I admitted, feeling embarrassed. "I'm just living on my pension and what I make from consulting." "Let's talk about that after we know what we're dealing with," Nora said kindly. "Right now, my priority is making sure you understand the situation and that you're protected. We can work out payment arrangements. Most of what we'll do initially is preventative, setting up protections that keep you safe. That's much less expensive than trying to fix things after they've gone wrong." She leaned forward, her expression serious but not unkind. "Mr. Harlow, Leonard, can I ask you something personal?" I nodded. Why did you come here instead of just asking your son to explain everything? What made you decide you needed outside help? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. I looked down at my hands, rough and weathered from decades of physical work. Because I don't think he sees me as someone worth explaining things to. He sees me as someone to manage, someone to work around. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of feeling stupid in my own life. She smiled slightly, and I saw something like approval in her eyes. Good. That's the right place to start. Because you're not stupid, Leonard. You built a career, paid off a house, raised a son. You have rights, and you have value. Don't let anyone, including family, convince you otherwise. Over the next hour, Nora walked me through the basics of property rights, powers of attorney, and common tactics people used to pressure family members into risky financial decisions. She drew diagrams on her legal pad, showing me how ownership worked, how loans could be structured, what kind of documents would be dangerous to sign. She asked detailed questions about my assets, my pension, any promises I'd made to Trevor over the years. Had I ever told him he could use the house? Had I ever put him on any accounts? Had I ever signed anything that might have given him partial ownership or access? Have you ever told him he'd inherit the house? Of course, he's my son. When I'm gone, everything goes to him. I've told him that many times. And does he know that's in your will? I hesitated. I don't actually have a formal will. Catherine and I talked about it, but after she passed, I just never got around to it. It seemed like something I could put off. Nora wrote something down with more emphasis. That's something we should address. Without a will, state law determines inheritance, which usually works fine, but having clear documentation gives you more control and prevents disputes. It also makes your intentions crystal clear. So even without a will, he'd get the house eventually. Most likely, yes, assuming he's your only heir and there are no complications. But eventually is the key word here. He can't touch it while you're alive unless you give him permission. And that's what he seems to be trying to get. Access now, while you're still here, while you can still say no. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than I'd wanted to believe. Trevor wasn't just being pushy or insensitive about a business opportunity. He was actively trying to access my assets before I was gone, possibly putting my security at risk for his business gambles, and he was doing it in a way that made me feel foolish for even questioning him. What do we do? I asked, hearing the weariness in my own voice. We protect you, legally, formally on paper where it counts. She stood up. Let me call Elias and see if he can join us. I want him to hear all of this directly from you. She stepped out of the conference room, and I sat alone for a few minutes, looking at the notes she'd taken. Seeing my situation written down in someone else's handwriting made it feel more real, more serious. This wasn't just hurt feelings or family drama. This was my home, my security, my entire foundation. When Nora returned, she had a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes following her. He moved with quiet confidence, the kind that came from knowing exactly what he was doing and having done it successfully many times before. Leonard, this is Elias Grant, Nora said. Elias, Leonard Harlow. He shook my hand with a firm, warm grip. Good to meet you, Leonard. Nora's filled me in on the basics. Mind if I ask a few follow-up questions? Go ahead. We all sat down, and Elias opened his own notepad. Has Trevor ever had any power of attorney over your affairs? Any legal authorization to act on your behalf? No, nothing formal like that. I've never given him that kind of authority. Good. Have you ever signed anything giving him authorization to act on your behalf financially? To access your accounts, speak to your bank, anything like that? Not that I know of. Not intentionally, anyway. Elias exchanged a glance with Nora. Then we have options. We can create documentation that explicitly protects your property, and we can set up safeguards that prevent anyone from using your assets without very specific conditions being met. Can we do that before Thursday? We can start today, Elias said, his voice reassuring. Nora and I will draft the necessary documents, you'll review and sign them, and then we'll file them with the appropriate authorities. By Thursday morning, you'll have legal protections in place that your son doesn't know exist. And at the bank meeting? I asked, feeling my heart beat faster. Elias smiled slightly, and I saw a hint of something strategic in his expression. That depends on what you want to happen. What outcome are you looking for? I want him to stop pressuring me. I want him to understand that I'm not just going to roll over because he says so. Then we make that clear, Nora said. Leonard, you have a choice here. You can go to that meeting with Trevor and refuse to sign anything, and we can back you up with documentation if needed. Or, she paused, looking at Elias. Or we can make Thursday's meeting a different kind of event. Elias finished. You can show up with us, both of us, as your legal representation. The image formed in my mind, walking into that bank with 2 attorneys while Trevor expected me to arrive confused and alone. The role reversal was almost dizzying. For a moment, I imagined his face, the shock and confusion when he realized I hadn't come alone, that I'd brought reinforcements he couldn't dismiss or talk around. Is that too aggressive? I asked, uncertain. Would it make things worse? Elias shook his head firmly. It's not aggressive, it's appropriate. If your son is pressuring you to sign documents you don't understand, having legal counsel present is the most reasonable response in the world. Any legitimate business person would understand that. The question is whether you're ready to draw that line. I thought about Trevor's laugh on the phone. The old man folds easy when you press him in public. I thought about being made to feel stupid in my own son's house, dismissed and patronized in front of strangers as if my 3 decades of work and experience meant nothing. I'm ready, I said, and felt something solid settle in my chest as I spoke the words. We spent the rest of the afternoon going over details. Elias and Nora asked about my pension structure, my savings accounts, any debts or obligations I had. They asked about Catherine, about how long ago she'd passed, about whether there were any other family members who might have claims or interests. They explained concepts I'd never fully understood: trusts, beneficiaries, fiduciary duty, conflict of interest. They never made me feel slow or confused. They just explained things clearly and checked that I understood before moving on. What we're creating, Nora said, spreading out a blank sheet of paper and sketching a simple diagram, is a structure that shields your house and savings from business ventures you haven't explicitly approved. Trevor can still inherit everything when you pass. That doesn't change. But he can't leverage your assets now for his deals. He can't put your security at risk while you're still here. And the bank. What about that form I already signed? We'll contact Jonah directly, Elias said. With your permission, we'll inform the bank in writing that any attempts to use your property as collateral require your direct sign-off and verification with us. They'll flag your accounts accordingly. It's a standard protective measure. Won't that make them suspicious of Trevor? Possibly, Elias said with a slight shrug. But that's not your problem to manage. Your job is to protect yourself. If Trevor's plans are legitimate and above board, he'll find other ways to fund them. If they're not, then you've prevented yourself from being caught up in something dangerous. By the time I left their office, it was early evening. The sun was setting behind the downtown buildings, casting long shadows across the parking lot. We had an appointment scheduled for the next morning at the courthouse to file some basic paperwork, and another meeting in the afternoon to finalize everything. One more thing, Nora said, as she walked me to the door. Don't tell Trevor we're involved, not yet. Don't tell him you've seen lawyers, don't mention our names, nothing. Let him think Thursday is going to go the way he expects. I nodded, understanding the strategic wisdom in that approach. What if he asks why I want to meet at the bank instead of having him pick me up? Just say you have some errands to run nearby first, Elias suggested. Keep it vague. The less information he has, the better. All right. I can do that. Leonard, Nora said, her voice gentle but firm. You're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel good right now. I know it probably feels like you're betraying your son. But protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's wisdom. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She was right. Part of me did feel guilty, like I was being sneaky or underhanded. But another part of me, the part that had kept rail yards safe for 30 years by anticipating problems before they happened, knew this was necessary. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the folder Nora had given me. Copies of documents she and Elias were preparing, explanations of what each one did, a timeline of what would happen over the next 2 days. I didn't understand every legal term, but I understood the outcome. My house would stay mine, my savings would stay mine, and my son's business risks would stay his. I thought about calling Trevor, warning him, trying one more time to have an honest conversation. But I remembered that laugh, that casual dismissal, those words at the diner. Too soft to say no if you push hard enough. No. This had gone past conversations. Trevor had made his choice about how to treat me. Now I was making mine about how to protect myself. I opened a drawer and pulled out a labeled folder, one of those simple manila ones from the office supply store. On the front, I wrote in careful letters, "In case anything happens, call Nora Finch, Elias Grant," and added their phone numbers below. Then I placed inside it copies of all my important documents, a brief summary of the situation Nora had typed up for me, and a note in my own handwriting. I am of sound mind. These attorneys are helping me protect my property rights. Trevor is not authorized to use my house or savings for his business without my explicit written consent reviewed by counsel. Leonard Harlow, with the date and my signature. I put the folder in the drawer and closed it gently, feeling the weight of the decision I'd made. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control over what was happening. For the first time since Trevor walked into my living room with that folder, I felt like maybe I could actually protect myself. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly through until morning. The next morning, Nora and Elias met me at the courthouse. We went to a filing office where I signed several documents while they witnessed and notarized them. "What exactly am I filing?" I asked. "A revocation of any implied permissions or broad financial authorities," Elias explained. "We're putting on record that you retain sole control of your property and that no one can act on your behalf without explicit written authorization reviewed by counsel." I signed my name, and the clerk stamped the documents with official seals. We went from the courthouse to the bank, where Jonah met with us privately. He looked uncomfortable when Nora and Elias introduced themselves, but he listened carefully. "Mr. Price," Nora said, "we're representing Leonard Harlow in matters related to his property and financial accounts. We need to inform you formally that Leonard has not authorized and will not authorize the use of his property as collateral for any loans without explicit approval that includes legal review by our office." Jonah glanced at me, then back to Nora. "So Thursday's appointment will still happen," Elias said smoothly. "But we'll be present, and any documents presented to Leonard will be reviewed by us before he signs anything." "I see." Jonah pulled up something on his computer. "That form Leonard signed last week. It was just a standard account holder acknowledgement. Nothing that would give anyone else access. I made sure of that." Relief washed over me. "So it wasn't anything that could hurt you," Jonah confirmed. "But I was concerned about where things might go next. I'm glad you've got representation now." After we left the bank, Elias suggested lunch at a quiet restaurant. Over sandwiches, they walked me through what would likely happen at Thursday's meeting. "Trevor will probably be surprised," Nora said. "He might try to dismiss our presence." "Let him," Elias added. "We'll stay calm and professional. Our job isn't to argue with him. It's to protect your interests. What if he gets angry? Then he gets angry, Nora said simply. That's not your responsibility to manage. You're allowed to have legal representation. That afternoon, we met again at Elias's office. They presented me with the final versions of the protective documents. Clear statements that my house was mine alone, that no one could leverage it without my explicit, informed consent. I read through everything slowly, asking questions when terms confused me. They explained patiently. One more thing we should discuss, Nora said. Your will. Even though state law would likely give everything to Trevor eventually, having a clear will gives you more control. For now, keep it simple. Everything to Trevor, but only after I'm gone. No access before then. We can draft that. As the sun set outside, I signed the final documents. They felt heavy in my hands, not because of the paper, but because of what they represented. A line I was drawing, a boundary I was enforcing. What happens now? I asked. Now you go home, Nora said. Try to rest. Tomorrow evening we'll meet here one more time to review the plan for Thursday, and Thursday morning we show up together. That evening, I got a text from Trevor. All set for tomorrow afternoon. Picking you up at 1:45. This is going to be great, Dad. I stared at the message before typing back. I'll meet you there at 2. There's something we need to discuss first. What do you mean? Just come with me. I'll see you at the bank, Trevor. He didn't respond after that. Let him be unsure for once. Around 9, my phone rang. Paige. Leonard? Trevor mentioned you seem stressed about tomorrow's meeting. I just wanted to call and say there's nothing to worry about. We're all family here. I appreciate that, Paige. Sometimes I think you don't realize how much Trevor looks up to you. This business deal, it's his way of building something significant. I understand that. Then why are you making things complicated? We just need a few signatures. Paige, I'm going to the meeting. We'll talk about everything then. But Leonard? I'll see you tomorrow. Good night. I hung up before she could push further. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt calm and clear and certain. At my kitchen table, I looked at the old photo I kept by the coffee pot. Trevor at age 8, grinning with a missing front tooth. I wondered what that kid would think of the man he'd become. But that was ending tomorrow. I turned off the lights and went to bed. In the morning, I'd put on my best shirt. I'd meet Nora and Elias. And then we'd walk into that bank together. And Trevor would finally understand that this time, I wasn't the one about to be cornered. Thursday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and stood at my kitchen window watching the sun rise. My stomach felt steady. My mind was clear. I showered, shaved carefully, and put on my good blue shirt. The one Catherine always said made me look distinguished. At noon, I met Nora and Elias at his office for one final review. You'll walk in with us, Elias said. Trevor will likely be surprised and possibly hostile. Don't engage with his emotions. Just sit down. If he asks why we're there, Nora added, you can simply say that you've retained legal counsel to review any documents before you sign. What if he tries to have the meeting without you present? We politely insist we stay, Elias said. Jonah already knows we're coming. And the documents? Nora patted her briefcase. We have copies of everything we've filed. If Trevor presents papers for you to sign, we'll review them and advise you. But honestly, Leonard, I doubt you'll be signing anything today. We arrived at the bank at 1:55. The three of us walked across the parking lot together, me in the middle, an attorney on each side. I caught our reflection in the bank's glass doors and almost didn't recognize myself. I looked taller somehow. Inside the lobby, Jenna looked up from her teller station and her eyes widened slightly. Jonah came out of his office. Leonard, good to see you. Ms. Finch, Mr. Grant. He shook everyone's hands. Trevor's already in the conference room. This way. The small glass-walled meeting room was visible from the lobby. Through the transparent walls, I could see Trevor sitting at the table, papers spread out, phone in hand. He looked confident and relaxed. He glanced up as we approached, and I watched his expression shift. First confusion, then recognition as he saw Nora and Elias, then something harder to read. We walked in. Jonah held the door. Trevor stood up slowly. "Dad, what's going on?" "Hello, Trevor." I moved to the table and pulled out a chair. Nora sat on my right, Elias on my left. "These are my attorneys, Nora Finch and Elias Grant." Trevor's confident smile wavered, then returned, forced and tight. "Attorneys? Dad, you're overreacting. I told you this is just family business. You don't need—" "Actually," I said, keeping my voice calm and level, "I'd like you to finish that sentence. What don't I need?" He laughed, but it came out brittle. "You don't need lawyers for this. It's just standard paperwork for the development deal. Come on, this is embarrassing." "What's embarrassing?" Nora asked pleasantly. "That Leonard wants to understand what he's signing before he commits his property." Trevor's eyes snapped to her. "His property isn't being committed to anything." "Then what role would Leonard's property play in your business venture?" Elias asked, pulling out a notepad. "It's just verification. For the investors." "Verification that what?" Elias pressed. "That Leonard agrees to back your loan? That his property can be used as security if your business fails?" Trevor's jaw tightened. "Why are you attacking me? I'm trying to build something here, and my own father shows up with lawyers like I'm some kind of criminal." "No one's attacking you," I said quietly. "I'm just asking the same question I asked at the start. What exactly am I signing?" "Papers, financial papers. You wouldn't understand them anyway." "Which is exactly why I brought people who do understand them," I interrupted, "so they can explain what I'm agreeing to." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Trevor looked at me like he'd never really seen me before. Jonah cleared his throat. "Perhaps it would help if Trevor shares the specific documents." Trevor's hands hovered over the stack of papers. His confidence was cracking now. "These are business documents, proprietary information. I'm not sharing them with—" "Then we're done here," Elias said simply. "If the documents are too sensitive to be reviewed by Leonard's legal counsel, then he obviously can't sign them." "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" Nora asked. "Because it seems like you don't want Leonard to understand what he's agreeing to." Trevor turned to me, desperate now. "Dad, come on, don't do this. You're embarrassing both of us. Just trust me." "I want to trust you," I said. "So help me trust you. Explain what these papers say." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down at the documents. I could see him trying to find an angle, but Nora and Elias had boxed him in completely. Finally, he gathered the papers into a messy stack. "You know what? Forget it. Clearly you don't want to support your own son. I'll find another way." "Trevor," I started. "No, it's fine. I get it. I'm on my own. Just like always." As Trevor moved toward the door, Elias spoke up. "Before you go, there's something Leonard needs you to understand." Trevor stopped. Elias spread out several documents on the table, the ones we'd filed. "These are protections Leonard has put in place. They establish that his house and savings are his alone, that they cannot be used as collateral for business ventures without his explicit informed consent, reviewed by counsel." "You filed legal documents against me?" Trevor's voice rose. "Your own son?" "Not against you," Nora corrected. "To protect Leonard's property rights. These don't prevent you from inheriting anything eventually. They just clarify that while Leonard is alive, his assets are his to control." "We've also notified the bank formally," Elias continued, nodding to Jonah, "that any attempts to use Leonard's property or information in loan applications require verification directly with him and with us." Trevor's face had gone pale. "You actually went behind my back and—" "I protected myself," I said, my voice steady. "After I heard you tell someone I was too soft to say no and that you just needed to push me hard enough. After you talked about getting the deed situation cleaned up, like my home was just an asset in your way. His mouth opened, but no words came out. From this point forward, Elias said, any conversations about Leonard's property or finances go through us. If you have legitimate business proposals, we're happy to review them. But the days of pressuring Leonard in public and expecting him to sign things he doesn't understand are over. Leonard, Jonah spoke up quietly. I want to confirm. You're clear on all this? These are the arrangements you want? I looked at my son, standing there with his expensive suit and his scattered papers and his shocked expression. I thought about all the years I'd worked to give him opportunities, all the times I'd said yes when I should have asked questions. Yes, I said. This is what I want. Trevor stared at me for a long moment. Then he swept his papers off the table, shoving them into his folder. Fine. You've made your choice. He walked out, leaving the glass door swinging behind him. Through the transparent walls, everyone in the bank lobby could see what had just happened, the confident young businessman storming out while his elderly father sat calmly with two attorneys. My chest felt tight, but not with panic, with relief. Nora touched my arm gently. You okay? Yeah, I said and realized it was true. I think I am. Elias began gathering the documents. Everything is now on record. Your property is protected. Your rights are established. We stood up. I shook Jonah's hand. Jenna caught my eye as we walked through the lobby. She gave me a small, supportive nod. She remembered how I'd looked that first time, confused and diminished. She'd seen the difference. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and cold. Nora and Elias walked me to my truck. What happens now? I asked. Now you go home, Nora said. Live your life. If Trevor contacts you, you don't have to respond unless you want to. And if he never comes back? Elias met my eyes. Then that's his choice, Leonard. You gave him every chance to treat you with respect. I climbed into my truck. As I started the engine, I looked at them through the windshield, these two people who'd helped me when I needed it most, who'd given me back something I'd lost without even realizing it was gone. Control, dignity, the right to say no. I drove home slowly. At my house, I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment looking at the small bungalow I'd paid off 30 years ago. My house, my security, my life. Inside, I made coffee and stood at my kitchen window. Everything was exactly the same as it had been this morning except for one crucial thing. I was free.